I'm Mary, 38, female, originally from Colombia. I'm going to tell you a story about my toxic ex-husband. I was 23, tired of my toxic family drama, and dreaming of a better life. So I hopped on a plane and touched down in the Lone Star State. Damn, the heat hit me like a brick wall. It was like walking into an oven, but hey, at least it wasn't my family's drama. Now, I didn't exactly roll into Texas with a suitcase full of cash. Nope, I ended up in a women's shelter for a bit. Let me tell you, those ladies were a lively bunch. We had everything from aspiring poets to DIY beauty experts. Living there was like being part of a quirky sitcom minus the laugh track. But you know what? I loved every minute of it. We'd swap stories, share our dreams, and heck, we even had a makeshift karaoke night. It was like finding a little family away from home. All right, buckle up because this part of the story is straight out of a romance movie. There I was, minding my own business in the shelter one day, waiting in line for some mystery casserole or whatever they were serving that day. And then in walks Levi. Normally, people coming into the shelter was no big deal. We got social workers, volunteers, and folks wanting to donate blankets or canned goods. The place was just a revolving door for all sorts of people. But when I saw Levi, y'all, it's like my heart hit the floor. I mean, who invited Prince Charming to the homeless shelter? I sure didn't. This guy was drop-dead gorgeous, and I was just standing there with my tray thinking, what in the world is he doing here? I'm not going to lie, he looked like he stepped out of a GQ magazine. Our eyes locked, and he caught me staring like a deer in headlights. But instead of being weirded out, he grinned like he just won the lottery and made his way over to me. My English at the time was, let's say, a work in progress, but Levy didn't seem to mind. He was patient, kind, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. He drops this bombshell, calling me beautiful, saying a girl like me shouldn't be in a place like this. I was thinking, you got that right, Levi, but I played it cool. Turns out this handsome fellow was one of the social workers assigned to help out. There were a lot of the ladies who were dealing with PTSD, anxiety, and depression, so he decided to take on extra shifts just to help out a bit more. But after a couple of weeks, he told me the real reason he wanted to take on extra shifts. To be honest, Mary, I wanted to see more of you. Really, yeah, it's crazy to say it out loud, but you make me feel really good, and I want to see more of you. Let me tell you, that man had me blushing more than a schoolgirl with a crush. Fast forward a few months, and it was pretty obvious to everyone at the Women's Center that Levi and I were basically a thing. We didn't slap any labels on it, but we weren't scared of hiding it either. We just rolled with it. Levi just got me, you know. He made me feel seen and heard in a way nobody else ever had. Living in the shelter was like being in a fishbowl. Some folks were happy for us, cheering us on like we were a real-life fairy tale. Others were a mix of jealous and bitter, and then there were the ones who simply didn't care. But hey, I was happy, and that's what mattered. After a while, Levi told me he had something to tell me. What is it, Levi? I want you to move in with me. Please say yes. Did I hear that right? He wanted me to leave the shelter and be with him. That was insane. I'll admit, I hesitated for a hot minute. Moving in with a guy I'd known for less than a year sounded crazy, but life's short, right? So I thought, why not? I took the leap. Levi and I moved into our little love nest, and let me tell you, it felt so freeing. From a women's shelter to an actual home, talk about moving up in the world, just like I always wanted. And just when I thought life couldn't get any better, Levi pulled out all the stops. He goes down on one knee and proposes on New Year's Day, right when the countdown hits 0. Romantic as all get out, right? That man lifted me off my feet and took me straight to cloud 9. He was always pampering me, buying me gifts, telling me how much he loved me, how much he cared. I mean, who needs a fairy tale when you've got Levy, right? It was like living in a constant state of bliss, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Life was good. Life was perfect. So after riding that honeymoon phase high, Levy drops a bomb on me. 3 months into our wedded bliss, he came up to me and said, "Hey babe, there's something I want to tell you. I want you to meet my friends. I think it's time." Now you might be scratching your head, thinking, how did you not know about his friends this whole time? Well, folks, it's a little more complicated than it seems. See, Levi always told me he didn't really have friends, that his only buddies were his co-workers, whom I knew from the shelter. But out of the blue, he springs these dinner plans with some people who were his old school buddies. And get this, they were big shots. Businessmen, lawyers, not exactly the usual crowd for a social worker. Why didn't you tell me about these fancy-ass friends of yours? What am I even supposed to wear? Don't worry, babe. I got you covered. But babe, these people are big shots. You said it yourself. I'm going to need an extra fancy dress or something. Now imagine my surprise when Levi continues to spill the tea. On top of not telling me about his friends, he also didn't tell me about his net worth. Turns out he was not just a social worker because he's a good dude. No, he comes from a wealthy family. Social work was just a thing he did on the side because apparently he loved it. That's why he could afford all those fancy gifts he'd been showering me with. I got to admit, I was hurt. I mean, the man lied about his identity and kept me from meeting his real friends. It felt iffy, you know. But then I tried to be reasonable. Love makes you do crazy things, right? I figured maybe he was just caught up in the whirlwind of our fast-paced life, and it was better late than never. So we went to this fancy dinner with these high flyers, and they're talking about stocks, real estate, and all sorts of things. I'm just nodding along. I kept trying to jump into the conversation, but no one was letting me speak, including Levi. He would just drone on and on about how beautiful and exotic I was. And his friends would also ogle at me. I just felt like a fish out of water. Looking back, I should have known that all of these were red flags. Not being honest with me, calling me exotic, letting his friends eye me like that, it was a lot to take in. But at the time, I would ignore these uneasy feelings and just keep smiling. Love, as they say, can make you forgive a whole bunch of mess. Fast forward a couple of years, and it's like time was on fast forward. All the love that once had us floating on cloud 9 was slowly fizzling out like a soda left open for too long. I was trying to rekindle our connection. Don't get me wrong, I did my part as a wife and a friend. But Levy, man, he was always preoccupied with everything but me. I felt abandoned, just like back in Colombia. I wondered how I'd got myself into this mess. It was beyond frustrating being with him. Every attempt to get his attention felt like talking to a brick wall. But oh, when we go out together, it was a whole different story. Levi would pull a 180, showering me with kisses and showing me off to his friends like I was some trophy wife. Just look at her, isn't she gorgeous? Public displays of affection, we had that down. Everyone must have thought that we had the healthiest relationship ever. But private conversations, yeah, there were barely any of those anymore. Destiny's Child's "Say My Name" became my anthem because, let's be real, it was like I was living that song. He only seemed to love me in public, and in private, it was crickets. Honestly, the thought of leaving crossed my mind more than once. But how? How could I? I had no job, no money, nada. Levi was all I knew in America, and I felt trapped. It was like being caught in a web with no way out. I was living that love story, but without the happily ever after part. Things had gone on like this for ages, and I was getting so fed up with him. I had gotten so used to his absence. So I found myself spending time with some peanuts and the couch, with some good shows. There I was, chilling on the couch, watching some Netflix, minding my own business as usual, when my phone rang. It was Leve. I was feeling a bit giddy. I thought that he would take me out or call me and tell me what a fool he's been for treating me like a roach. "Hey, babe." "Mary, listen, I don't have much time." "What's wrong?" "I need you to come to the bar right now." This got me excited. You see, earlier in the night, before he left to go drinking with his buddies, I had asked if I could tag along. He said he didn't want me going there. Not because it would be too rowdy, not because it would be too much for me to handle, but because, according to him, I'd be cramping his style. Can you imagine? The man who was so obsessed with showing off his exotic and curvy Colombian woman was now afraid that I'd be cramping his style. We got into a little argument about it, and he kind of revealed how he's always felt about me, just as some piece of arm candy to show off to his friends. This crushed me. I didn't want to yell or scream or fight, because again, without him, I had nothing. I had stupidly placed all my bets on this man, and now I felt like I was trapped. So you can understand why I felt a bit hopeful when he invited me to the bar. I thought that he finally wanted to hang out with me. "You want me to come? Really?" "Yeah, babe, quickly. I'll send you the location. Just hurry." "Okay, what are we going to do when I get there?" "That doesn't matter. Just come quickly. My friends want to see you." "Oh yeah, so what time will you get here?" "You know, Levi, I'm sick of you fetishizing me." "What? What the hell are you talking about? You always parade me around your friends like I'm some doll." "I'm not coming. Mary, I swear to God." "You didn't want me to come in the first place, right? So I'm going to continue watching my show. Have a nice night." We got into it, a real knockdown, drag-out argument. Words were flying, and I wasn't holding back. It's like, make up your mind, Levi. I felt like a puppet, and he was pulling all the strings. I was done being a showpiece for his fancy friends. It was time for him to get a reality check, and let me tell you, that argument was the tipping point. But call me stupid or crazy. Maybe I'm both, but I gave in. Levi started showering me with all these words and promises on how he was going to do better, telling me he was sorry for everything he had done, and that he needed me right now. So what did I do? I went up to get dressed and headed out to the sports bar he was talking about. I got into my car and made my way to his location. The streets were pretty empty 'cause it was late at night, so I was cruising down the highway, trying to shake off that argument with Leva and remain hopeful for the change he promised to give me. But life, being the tricky thing it is, decided to shake things up for me. There was this lunatic drunk driver on the road who was swerving and honking like crazy, making us all anxious. To avoid a disaster, I ended up swerving off the road, crashing into the side of the road. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in the hospital, and there was Levi, scowling like it was his job. "Good, you're up." He sounded pissed and annoyed. Not a single indication of concern on his face. Go figure. When I took a good look around, I saw his drinking buddies in the room, but this time they weren't ogling me like before. Nope, they were looking at me with disinterest or downright disgust. Complete 180 from their earlier stares. Confused as heck, I asked Levi what happened. Instead of giving me a straight answer, he starts yelling at me, accusing me of driving like a maniac and that I ruined everything. The thing is, I didn't remember much at the time. I tried explaining that to him, telling him that the last thing I remember was driving on the highway, but he wasn't having it. His friends, one by one, started leaving without so much as a "get well soon" or anything that showed that they gave a damn. Levi then got up close and personal. "You're pathetic, Mary." And before I could even react or ask him more questions, he walked out, leaving me sobbing alone in the hospital. I cried myself to sleep, waking up the next morning to grab my phone, which was by my bedside. Just when I was about to call Levi or call someone or just check what day it was, I was met with a beast in the reflection. Yep, I had a busted, swollen face with a huge ass scar from my forehead to my cheek. I tried touching it, praying it wasn't real, hoping that this was just some scary-ass nightmare, but the pain was confirmation enough that it was all too real. I searched around the room for a mirror, and I saw one in the corner. I shifted up on my elbows to get a better look at myself, and sure enough, staring right back at me was what I saw in the phone. A beast I couldn't even recognize myself. I was hideous and scarred. Confusion took over, and the tears just kept coming. That's when the doctor walked in, saw how upset I was, and decided to sit down, trying to calm me down. Life had taken a sharp turn, and I was lost in a maze of pain and betrayal. The doctor laid it all out for me, explaining how I got into this accident. But when I asked about Levi, he looked upset and handed me an envelope, saying he'd give me some privacy to read it once he left. I tore that thing open, and there it was, a letter from Levi saying all sorts of crazy stuff. "Mary, I'm sure you know that it was bound to come to this. I don't love you anymore. I don't think that this is going anywhere, and I'm sure you feel it too. So that's why I have to release you with love. I have to let you go because I need you to do better for yourself, and I need to do better for me too. I can't possibly imagine a life with you after this accident. It scared us both." Wow, really? Because last time I checked, I was the one with scars. No one would want to wake up next to a scary face every morning. It would drive the strongest man insane. So that's why I want a divorce. We both deserve better. He went on to say he'd graciously cover my medical bills because he's just such a kind soul. Oh, and tucked in there with divorce papers, too. I lost it. I knocked down the water bottles beside me and threw my phone across the room. I was mad, upset, and feeling a pain I'd never known. This was the man who couldn't take his eyes off me when we first met, and now he wanted nothing to do with me. The Psalm CS must have been real loud because the doctor came back in. He did his best to console me, saying he had a feeling the letter wasn't good news. He called Levi and his friends a bunch of ogres, and honestly, I couldn't agree more. The rest of the day was a blur of tears, and trying to wrap my head around what the heck my life was going to look like from here on out. It felt like the ground had been pulled from under me, and I was left free falling into the unknown. So after dragging myself through the mess of the divorce with Levi and healing up in the hospital, I felt like I was back to square one, hopeless, lost, and alone. The idea of going back to the shelter crossed my mind, but life had a surprise waiting for me. The doctor who took care of me came through like a guardian angel. He offered me his guest house and suggested I work at his niece's cafe to help pay him back. It was a lifeline, and I grabbed it. Before I knew it, I was back on my feet, smiling, healing, laughing again. The accident, even Levi, started to feel like a distant memory. Fast forward 2 years, and there I am, not slinging lats as a barista, but managing a quaint little cafe. You heard that right. I was now the manager of this place. I guess all those years of selling tamales and areas on the busy streets of Colombia paid off. Life had a funny way of turning around. And then out of the blue, I saw Levi, beard all graying, walking in with someone who looked like she barely finished high school. They were giggling about something, and for a second, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But as he approached the counter, I knew for sure that it was my good-for-nothing ex-husband. I couldn't believe my eyes. Here I was hustling and building my life, and he waltzed in like it's just another day. It hit me, though, that I'd come a long way from the mess he left me in. I held my head high, readying myself for this showdown. Oh, they'd love to meet you. I've shown them your pictures, and they said you're gorgeous. Hi, how may I assist you today? Hi, can we do a wait, Mary? I'm sorry. Mary, it's you. Do I know you? Yes, I was playing dumb. I wasn't about to let that clown know that I knew it was him. I wanted to bruise his ego a bit, and it seemed to work because he frowned when I said, "That it's me, Levi." Oh, I could barely recognize you. Your scar, it's gone. Yep, that's what some good old-fashioned aloe vera and shea butter can do to you. And the melanin doesn't hurt either. But I mean, it's still visible in the right light. You look, wow. His date started looking uncomfortable, so I turned to her and said, "Hey, sweetheart, I'm sure you won't believe me when I say this, but that gut feeling you're feeling right now, the thing that's telling you to run for the hills, you better listen to that. Otherwise, he'll draw you in with all these fake promises and lies." Hey, don't talk to her like that. Don't listen to her, baby. She's out of her mind. I don't even know this woman. Oh yeah? Then how did you remember my name, jackass? The girl asked me who I was, and I told her that I was his ex-wife. She didn't seem to like that answer too much because she hit him, and then stormed out of the cafe. What the hell was that for? For all the years I put up with your crap. You're lucky I'm not calling the cops. Oh, calm down. She's 19 years old, so it's legal. It's still sick, Levi. I'm shocked, but honestly, I'm not surprised. Anyway, it's no matter. I see you're looking good, really good. I'm going to have to stop you right there, buddy. I'm not interested. What? Why not? Gee, let's see. Maybe it's because you left me when I needed it the most. Maybe it's because for the entirety of our marriage you treated me like I was some shiny toy you only took out to show off to your friends. Maybe it's because you're a scumbag who is sleeping with 19-year-olds. Maybe it's because... All right, I get it. Sheesh, Mary. That was the old me. I was a child back then. That's funny because just 5 seconds ago, your girlfriend bolted out of here. That was just a lapse in my judgment. I haven't stopped thinking about you. Good, I hope you continue to think about me. I hope that every waking moment you're haunted by the things you did to me. I hope you wake up with panic attacks. I hope you never feel any type of peace because you don't deserve it. You're a weak, pathetic, sick man. I'm not even sure if Jesus himself can save you. You're hopeless. You're worthless. You're the one who's pathetic. Levi looked like he wanted to cry. All of my patrons were looking at him with disgust, as I may or may not have shared my story a couple of times already. Levi started stammering and stuttering, trying to come up with an excuse, but all I did was stare at him silently, letting him know that there was nothing he could do or say to me to make me change my mind and get back with him. He eventually left, his shoulders all slumped, muttering something to himself, and I finally felt like I could breathe. Finally, I got to see the look on his face when he realized just how badly he messed up with me. Sometimes the devil is in the details, and I know that he's tormented every day, wondering what to do to get me back. But he should know that that is never, ever going to happen.
Security. Remove this imposter from my husband's funeral. Margaret's shrill voice cut through the solemn atmosphere of the funeral home. I stood frozen, still holding the white rose I'd brought to place on Dad's casket. The security guard looked uncomfortable but moved toward me as my stepmother continued her performance. "She's not even his real daughter," my half-sister Amanda Stage whispered to the horrified onlookers. "Just some kid he took pity on before he met Mom." My name is Olivia Parker, and at 35, I was being thrown out of my own father's funeral. The irony wasn't lost on me. The last time I'd seen Dad alive, he'd been trying to tell me something important, something about the past. But Margaret had interrupted before he could finish. The security guard gently took my arm. "Miss, I'm sorry, but I have to ask you to leave." "Wait," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I have a right to be here. He was my father. A DNA test would prove otherwise." That was my half-brother Michael smirking from his seat in the front row. The same smirk he'd worn when he'd accidentally destroyed my science project in high school, knowing Dad would believe his version of events over mine. I looked at Dad's casket, at the portrait of him displayed beside it. His kind eyes seemed to be watching this whole scene unfold, and for a moment I could almost hear his voice. "Stay strong. Live. The truth always comes out in the end." But before I could protest further, 2 security guards were escorting me toward the exit. The sound of snickering followed me out, my siblings enjoying their final victory over the outsider who dared to claim a place in their perfect family. As the doors closed behind me, I sank onto a bench outside the funeral home, my mind spinning back to my earliest memories. Dad, Thomas Parker, had been part of my life for as long as I could remember. He'd married my mom when I was just a baby, and though the marriage hadn't lasted, he'd remained my father in every way that mattered. He'd never missed a birthday, never failed to show up for school events, and had put me through college despite Margaret's protests about wasting money on someone else's kid. My phone buzzed. A text from Amanda. "Hope you enjoyed the show. Dad's real family is saying goodbye now." I was about to turn off my phone when another message came through, this one from an unknown number. "Ms. Parker, this is James Wilson from Wilson & Associates Law Firm. I'm your father's attorney. Please remain nearby. Your presence will be required for the reading of the will immediately following the service." My heart skipped a beat. Margaret had told me there was no will, that everything had been arranged years ago to pass directly to her and her children. But then again, Margaret had told me a lot of things over the years. I sat there for what felt like hours, watching people arrive and leave, many giving me curious or pitying glances. A few old family friends tried to approach me, but quickly scurried away when Margaret's sharp eyes landed on them through the funeral home windows. Finally, the service ended. People began filing out, and I watched Margaret lead my siblings toward their cars, their faces still bearing those self-satisfied expressions. But before they could leave, James Wilson appeared at the entrance. "Mrs. Parker," he called out to Margaret, his voice carrying across the parking lot, "and family, please proceed to my office immediately for the reading of Thomas Parker's will and final letters." Margaret's head snapped around so fast I thought she might get whiplash. "Letters? What letters?" "All will be explained at my office," James replied calmly. Then his eyes found me on the bench. "Ms. Olivia Parker, that includes you." "She's not invited," Margaret snapped. "Any paperwork involving my husband's estate will be handled by his real family." James adjusted his glasses, looking down at Margaret with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Actually, Mrs. Parker, Olivia's presence is explicitly required by your late husband. In fact, he left specific instructions that the will cannot be read without her in attendance." The look on Margaret's face was worth every second of humiliation I'd endured that day. She opened and closed her mouth several times, but no words came out. Amanda and Michael exchanged worried glances. "If you'll all follow me," James continued, "there's something you need to see, particularly an envelope your father left, dated 30 years ago, with explicit instructions that it was to be opened only upon his death, with all of his children present." As I stood to follow them, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the funeral home windows. Behind me, Dad's portrait seemed to be smiling, as if he knew something the rest of us didn't. Maybe he did. Maybe that's what he'd been trying to tell me during our last conversation. Walking toward the lawyer's office, I remembered Dad's words from that day. "Liv, there's something you need to know about the past, about your mother." But Margaret had burst in then, as she always did when Dad tried to have private conversations with me, and the moment was lost. Now, watching Margaret and my siblings march ahead of me, their confidence slightly shaken, I couldn't help but wonder, what was in that 30-year-old letter? And why had Dad waited until after his death to reveal it? The answer would change everything, not just about my past, but about the future Margaret and her children had so carefully planned. They just didn't know it yet. The tension in James Wilson's office was thick enough to cut with a knife. Margaret perched on the edge of her seat like a bird ready to take flight, while Amanda and Michael slouched in their chairs, trying to appear unconcerned but failing miserably. I sat quietly by the window, watching dust motes dance in the afternoon sunlight. James cleared his throat and pulled out a large manila envelope. Before we proceed with the current will, Thomas left explicit instructions to read this letter first. He held up a yellowed envelope, the edges worn with age. It's dated September 15th, 1993. Margaret's face paled. That was around the time she first met Dad, and just after his divorce from my mom. "This is ridiculous," Michael interrupted. "Some ancient letter can't possibly be relevant now." James ignored him and broke the seal. The paper inside was old but well preserved, as if Dad had known how important it would be to protect these words. "My dearest children," James began reading, "if you're hearing this, it means I'm no longer with you. There are truths that need to be spoken, secrets I've carried for too long." "Oh, enough of this drama," Margaret cut in. "Just get to the will." James gave her a stern look. "Mrs. Parker, your husband's instructions were very clear. Now, as I was saying," he continued reading, "Olivia, my beautiful daughter, and yes, I mean my daughter in every sense of the word. The truth is, I didn't just marry your mother out of love for her. I married her because you were mine." The room went completely silent. I felt the floor tilt beneath me as the words sank in. "What?" Amanda shrieked. "That's impossible." But James wasn't finished. "I met Sarah, Olivia's mother, years before I publicly knew her. We were young in love, but my family disapproved. When she told me she was pregnant, I was forced to keep my distance. My father threatened to cut off not just me, but to use his influence to destroy Sarah's family business as well. I was a coward. I let her go." Tears were streaming down my face now. All those years of feeling like an outsider, of Margaret's snide comments about my questionable parentage, Dad had known the truth all along. By the time I finally stood up to my father and married Sarah, Olivia was already a year old. We tried to make it work, but the weight of our past secrets and my years of absence had created too wide a gap. When we divorced, I couldn't bring myself to tell the truth. I thought I was protecting everyone. Margaret had gone from pale to red. "This is preposterous. Where's the proof?" James pulled out another document from the envelope. Thomas included DNA test results from 1993, confirming his paternity. He also had updated tests done 6 months ago, which are included in his current will. Michael jumped to his feet. "This can't be legal." "Mom, tell him." But Margaret wasn't looking at Michael. She was staring at me with a mixture of hatred and something else. Fear. "There's more," James continued. "Sarah and I agreed to keep this secret to protect Olivia from my father's interference. But now that both he and Sarah are gone, and with my own death, the truth needs to be known. Olivia isn't just my daughter, she's my firstborn child." The implications of those words hung heavy in the air. In traditional inheritance law, the firstborn often held a special position. This letter also contains my deepest apologies to Olivia for not standing up for the truth sooner, to Amanda and Michael, who must now adjust to a reality different from what they've known, and even to you, Margaret, though I know this revelation will hurt you most of all. "I don't believe any of this," Margaret spat, but her voice trembled. "It's all lies." James set down the letter and picked up a thick file. Along with this letter, Thomas left extensive documentation. Birth records, DNA tests, photographs, letters between himself and Sarah, and a detailed timeline of events. He was very thorough in ensuring the truth couldn't be disputed. I sat there, trying to process everything. Dad wasn't just the man who'd raised me. He was my biological father. All those times Margaret had mocked my unknown origins, she'd been unknowingly insulting her own husband. "Now," James said, picking up another document, "shall we proceed with the current will?" Though I should warn you, Thomas made some significant changes 6 months ago, after confirming the DNA results again. Margaret gripped the arms of her chair, her knuckles white. Amanda had started crying quietly, while Michael just stared blankly ahead. "Actually, I spoke up for the first time since entering the office. Could we take a brief break? I think we all need a moment to process this. James nodded sympathetically. Of course. Let's reconvene in 15 minutes. As everyone filed out of the office, I remained in my chair, finally understanding why Dad had tried so hard to talk to me that last time. He wanted to tell me the truth himself, but Margaret's constant interference had prevented it. I pulled out my phone and looked at the last photo I had of Dad and me together, taken at my little cafe 3 months ago. He was smiling proudly as I showed him the new coffee roaster I bought. Even then, he must have known he was sick, must have known his time was running out. I'm so sorry, Dad, I whispered to the photo. I wish you'd told me sooner. But maybe I realized this was his final gift to me, not just the truth about my identity, but the chance to finally stand on equal footing with the family that had tried so hard to push me away. Through the office window, I could see Margaret huddled with Amanda and Michael, their faces tight with worry. Whatever came next, nothing would ever be the same. Dad had made sure of that with one 30-year-old letter. When we met again in James' office, the mood had changed a lot. Margaret, who had seemed so sure of herself before, now looked nervous, playing with her pearl necklace. Amanda and Michael sat quietly, no longer making rude comments. James opened the current will and adjusted his glasses. Now about Thomas Parker's estate and his wishes. What came next felt like a series of shocks, one after the other. To my daughter, Olivia Parker, I leave 50% of my entire estate, including my shares in Parker Industries and my personal investments. Margaret gasped loudly. James kept reading. Also, I leave her my grandfather's house on Maple Street, where she lived with her mother, Sarah, as a child. The house has been fully renovated over the past 6 months. I remembered that house, the big old one with the wraparound porch. Mom and I had lived there with Dad during their short marriage. I always wondered why he kept it. To my children Amanda and Michael Parker, James continued, I leave 25% of the estate each. This will be held in trust until they can show financial responsibility by keeping steady jobs for at least 2 years. What? Michael shouted. That's not fair. James ignored him. To my wife Margaret, I leave our current home and a monthly allowance, which will be managed by the estate trustees. Margaret's face turned red. An allowance? Like I'm a child? James didn't stop. Also, Olivia will get the controlling shares in Parker Industries. The room went wild. Margaret jumped up, Amanda started crying, and Michael yelled about fighting the will. James raised a hand and everyone went quiet. There's a personal letter for each of you, he said, handing out 4 envelopes. Thomas wanted you to read them in private. I took mine with shaking hands and waited until I got home. Sitting in my small apartment above my cafe, I opened the letter. My dearest Olivia, by now, you know the truth about your birth. I wanted to tell you for years but was too afraid. You deserve better from me. I've watched you build your cafe from nothing. You worked twice as hard because I didn't give you the same advantages as your siblings. But you never became bitter. You always stayed kind, even to those who weren't kind to you. You have your mother's strength and my business sense, even if you don't see it yet. I gave you the controlling shares of Parker Industries not just because you're my firstborn, but because you're the only one who truly understands hard work and honesty. I know you'll do the right thing, not just for the company, but for Amanda and Michael too. They need guidance more than they need money. I'm so proud of you, Liv. I hope you can forgive me for not telling you sooner. All my love, Dad. A week later, I sat in what was now my office at Parker Industries, going through old files. It turned out Dad had been preparing me for this all along. Through our talks at my cafe, his interest in how I ran my business, and the advice he gave me. Margaret had already said she was going to contest the will, but James said she didn't have a strong case. Amanda surprised me by apologizing. She said she had always been jealous that Dad was proud of me. Michael was still angry, but he had time to figure things out while he worked to earn his share. As for me, I kept the cafe. It was my first success, and it meant a lot to me. But I also threw myself into learning everything about Parker Industries. Dad was right. I understood more than I realized. The employees remembered me from when I was little. Some told me Dad had talked proudly about how I ran my cafe and even used my ideas in meetings. One afternoon, as I walked past the big portrait of Dad in the lobby, I looked up at his kind eyes. I could almost hear him saying, "See, Liv. The truth always comes out in the end." I smiled and touched the frame. "Thanks, Dad," I whispered. "For everything." The truth had come out, and with it, I gained not just an inheritance, but something even more important, the knowledge that I truly belonged. That weekend, I visited the house on Maple Street. Standing on the porch, I felt like I had come full circle. I was no longer the outsider. I was the daughter my father had always believed in. Margaret's angry legal letters didn't bother me anymore. I had the truth, Dad's trust, and a future he had carefully prepared for me. Sometimes the best kind of revenge isn't fighting back, it's becoming exactly who you were meant to be.